Which file system to use in between OS and Linux? I have got my paws on a large USB drive which I'd like to use as a backup/general storage at the office. I was thinking of having two partitions, one of Time Machine backup and one for general storage. As I will be using the disk for both my Linux workstation and MacBook Pro, I was wondering what file system to use. I have been reading up on old forum threads and questions here, and my understanding is that Time Machine demands a volume with HFS Plus file system, meaning it would not work with ext4. Likewise, HFS Plus will be read on Linux, but performance-wise it would be questionable. The majority of the info I found is from 2009 to 2010 era, so I am wondering if there has been any changes. Could someone confirm or deny these statements? Or perhaps add more info on the matter? Would it be then advisable to have one partition with HFS Plus and one with ext4? I am skeptical if that would be much better. Furthermore, the disk utility tool in OS doesn't give the option to format with Linux native. Apparently it's more likely that one uses Win/OS than Linux/OS.
Linux can write to HFS Plus without problems. If you really need read/write support from both OSes, then you only have one choice, namely to format as HFS Plus, since Time Machine won't work with others and macOS can't natively write to ext4. See how can I mount an ext4 file system on OS X? Since Linux allows writing to journaled HFS Plus volumes, use diskutility.app on your Mac to format the partition with HFS Plus, journaled. Newer macOS versions will by default use UPFs instead of HFS Plus, but Linux support for UPFs is still quite limited. There's a read-only Fuse driver, but in the future write support may be added.
Just to add to SLHCK's answer, formatting the partition as non-journal was a little tricky using disk utility on OS 10.7 as the option for HFS plus non-journal is not apparent in the formatting arrays options. The solution is to format it as HFS plus journal, then turn off journaling by selecting the partition there, while holding Option key, open the File menu and select Disable Journaling. Where? See this URL.
There is a modern possibility now for macOS and Linux compatibility at the file system level, ZFS. It works well and it's supported in both environments. See this URL and this URL. It's a possibility I haven't seen mentioned until now in this context, here, or in answers to similar questions. Pros. Modern, actively developed, and future-proof open-source file system. It plays well with permissions and Unix in general. Fat-like file systems don't do that in any of their incarnations, as far as I know. Extremely well suited for a shared partition in a dual boot system. As a bonus, ZFS offers a lot of unique features, like data integrity, pull management, copy on write, snapshots, this URL. Only recently BTRFS, Linux, and apps, macOS, have been trying to catch up with similar features. Cons. It might require a bit of knowledge in management, given that it's both a file system and a volume manager rolled into one. It requires the installation of third-party system software on both macOS and Linux. On macOS it can be installed using Brewcask, and on Linux, it might be supported by distribution, as Ubuntu does for example. It could be not that well suited to portable disks depending on the use case. Chances are most other people's macOS and Linux systems won't be able to read your ZFS formatted disks as is, see point above, and a connection failure, like detaching the cable inadvertently, might have annoying consequences. Personally, I've used ZFS with a dual boot, macOS/Linux, MacBook Pro for several years now, both with USB 3 disks and internal SATA disks. Depending on the situation, it's a very good solution. There is also an actively developed, albeit very recent, ZFS Windows port. It might be several years before it's usable in production though. This URL.
If you want to support the channel, press the consider subscribing.